Thank you, David. And thank you all for joining us this morning. It has been said that if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always gotten. And in many ways, that sounds like politics in Baltimore today. For indeed, every election cycle, we tend to elect career politicians, and we do this over and over and over again. And we think that we'll get different results this time. And we're often disappointed. So we've done what we always do, and we get what we've always gotten. So what have we gotten? Well, we've gotten 6 years of runaway crime. We have corruption at the highest levels of government. We have children who are not being educated and prepared to compete on a global level. We're losing population, we're losing jobs, and on top of all of that, we have this pandemic virus called COVID-19. Yes, we are getting much of what we've always gotten. But I'm not sure about you, but I've had enough of this, and this madness has to stop. And that's why today I'm announcing that I'm running for mayor of Baltimore City as an independent candidate. So I'm not running as a Democrat, even though I come from a family of Democrats. I'm not running as a Republican, even though many of my mentors are Republicans. I am running as an independent because I want to bring the best and brightest ideas to Baltimore City to make our city great. Now, my roots in Baltimore are wide and they are deep. But I recognize that there may be people there who may not know Bob Wallace and my story and my background and my vision for the city. So what I'd like to do this morning is to share with you my story. And then I want to pivot and share with you my dream for Baltimore City. Now, my story is a Baltimore story. I am a Baltimore boy. My roots started in Cherry Hill in South Baltimore. Born one of 5 boys to Leon and Irene Wallace. My mother was a janitor who washed the floors of the schools in the Baltimore City school system. My dad was a laborer, started at Bethlehem Steel, then Davidson Chemical, and then Grace Corporation. The struggles that my family faced in Cherry Hill are the same struggles that we see today in many neighborhoods in Baltimore City. For we struggle with poverty. And I struggled on a personal level. You may not know this, but when I was a kid, I struggled with low self-esteem because I had a speech impediment. My mother was a recovering alcoholic, and she struggled years to overcome that addiction. Many times my parents could not pay the bills. So we had no water, no electricity, and no heat. So what did we have to do? We had to go to our neighbors to get water just to wash and to clean with. We had to study many times at night by candlelight because the electricity had been turned off. We had no heat many times in the winter. So my brothers and I, we would huddle, put our winter coats on, and we would huddle in the bed together just to stay warm. So you see, I understand the pains and the difficulties of poverty. We've had many friends who I grew up with who became addicted to drugs and to alcohol, and many who were in and out of the prison system, right? Some of them are here today and some are not. I understand what it is, how it feels to go to bed hungry at night. I understand how it feels to be made fun of and to be ridiculed. I understand how it feels to be on welfare and not being able to make ends meet. I understand the abuse that sometimes the police would bring upon our community. I understand this pain. So I understand the pain of many Baltimoreans today. But see, our story does not end there. Because my mother and father, they had a dream. And their dream was this. Their dream was that although we're in poverty today, we don't have to be in poverty tomorrow. They made it clear that our present did not dictate our future. Mom and daddy had a dream, and they gave us, and they said, we have a ticket for you. And this ticket is on a train called education. And so mom and daddy reinforced in us the importance of education, as many of the African American parents did during that era and do also today. So what do? My brothers and me, we decided to launch from Cherry Hill. I had one brother who went to Emerson, one to City, one to Forest Park, one to Northwestern. I ended up at Polytech. And the reason I ended up there is my dad, he made me go to Poly. Poly at that time was an all-boys school. We had no girls. Of course, I wanted to be with the girls. But Daddy had a different vision and a plan for me, so I went off to Poly. Poly was probably one of the best things that happened to me because I learned many lessons at Poly. But the one lesson that I learned was in building relationships with people who are different than I was. You see, prior to me going to Poly, I had gone to school with kids who were all Black and who were all from Cherry Hill. That was my universe. Now, all of a sudden, I'm at Poly. We had rich kids, we had poor kids. We had Black kids, we had white kids. We had Latino kids, we had Asian kids. Now I was forced to build relationships with people who were different from me and who looked different than I did. Well, I was always good at building relationships. So I built many with young men who lived in very affluent neighborhoods. And I had the opportunity to go to these neighborhoods and spend time in their homes. And as I walked through their homes and I began to see how they lived, and they had all these rooms. They had a dining room, living room, family room. They had a kitchen, they had a mud room. We had 2 rooms, 4 rooms. We had a kitchen and a living room and 2 bedrooms. I saw they had 3 meals a day and they had snacks whenever they wanted to. In my case, we were struggling just to make ends meet, just to get 1 meal a day. Each child had their own bedroom and their own bed. And here we were in my family with 5 boys bunched into a little tiny bedroom, oftentimes having to share the same bed. And I looked at this contrast between how I lived in Cherry Hill and how my classmates lived in other well-to-do neighborhoods. And for the first time in my life, I recognized that Baltimore was indeed a tale of 2 cities. That I was living in one city, which was defined by poverty and struggle and uncertainty. But there was another city that was affluent and prospering. And although I lived in the first city of poverty, I wanted to live in the other city of prosperity and affluence. So that weekend, I came back home to Cherry Hill from my friend's home. I sat down with Mom and Daddy. I said, Mom and Daddy, I have seen something this weekend, and I want it. Yes, we're living in poverty today, Mom and Daddy, but I've seen a way to get to this other part of the city, and I want that. And they reinforced to me once again that the way to do that is through education. So what did I do? I went back to Poly. I studied at Poly. From Poly, I went to UPenn to study mechanical engineering and applied mechanics. Later in life, I attended the Amos Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. Between those, I worked at corporations like IBM, Procter & Gamble, DuPont, Westinghouse. From there, I became an entrepreneur and launched businesses in technology and in energy and in media. I've been blessed to write 8 books on entrepreneurship and economic development because at that point in my life, although I was in city number 1, I wanted to live in city number 2. So now I live in city number 2. But I recognize that Baltimore, even today, is still a tale of 2 cities. So if we are to be great, then all of us have to be great. We can only be as successful as the least successful of our city. So my job as mayor would be, how do we convert those 2 cities, that tale of 2 cities, into one? Because when we do that, we know that we are better together. And we cannot be great until all of us are great. So how do we do that? How does the new mayor do that? Well, in my view, my friends, there are three things the new mayor has to do. And I want to share those three things with you. Number one, they have to run the business. He or she have to run the city as if it was a business. They have to run it as an entrepreneur would run his or her business. When you look at the constraints and the reality of what the new mayor is going to walk into come December of this year, we're talking about a deficit that exceeds $140 million between the 2 years. We're talking about a pandemic that has impacted the city and our nation and the world and has changed how we do business and how we relate to one another. We have the possibility of reduced revenues, but increasing costs to provide services that are more needed now than they were before. This is the environment that the new mayor is walking into. In my view, this new mayor, in order to put all these things together and to manage the reality and resources to match the needs, they have to think, act, and perform like an entrepreneur. There's a term that I give this new mayor, and what I hope to be, which is a mayorpreneur. A mayorpreneur. When I'm your mayor, I will be a mayorpreneur because I will run the city like I run my businesses, recognizing I have finite resources, but I have unlimited opportunity. How do I put those together to create value? And that is what the new mayor has to do. The first thing they have to do. The second thing they have to do is they have to be a transformer and not just a caretaker. A transformer and not just a caretaker. See, transformation is a nice word, but disruption is its motivator because many people are not comfortable with transformation. Politicians by nature do not like to transform things. They like them just as they are. But I am a disruptor. For I have been a disruptor in my business for 30 years. And I have disrupted businesses and technologies to create opportunities and jobs. So what needs to be transformed, you might ask? Well, as a mayorpreneur, we must first of all transform how we think. We must transform how we think about government, how we think about our future. See, many in our city have lost hope. They've given up. So part of my job as the mayor is to change how people think. Not only the citizens, but the people who work in government. Then we must transform the people who are leading our city. That's why as mayorpreneur, I would bring in new ideas, new people, new experts who may not have been in government before, but who have a passion for change and a passion to make Baltimore better. I would transform technology. I'm an engineer by degree and by background. And so technology will be transformed in order for it to map to and to match the new requirements of the new economy post this pandemic. And then I would also transform how we do what we do, our processes. I have supported the city government for over 25 years in information technology and technology. So I know how the city works. And I know today that there are things that we can do to transform how we run our city. And as mayorpreneur, I will be very active in help me to make that happen. So those are the three things the two things that the mayor has to do. And the third thing that he or she has to do is to capture the future. Now, why is that important? It's important because I think most of us would agree that if we can find a way to build an economy that is robust and that is sustainable, and that will benefit and lift all of our citizens, not just those who have college degrees, then we will impact the social issues that we face today. The crime, the hopelessness, the dysfunction. If we can build this economy, it will impact all of those areas. So I believe that the next mayor have to be able to capture the future. Now, how do we do that? How do you capture the future? Well, there's two ways to do it. The first way is you can create it. You can be the creator of that future. The other way is you can be a good predictor of what the future will be. Economists in our country, they have shown over the last 250 years that we as a society in the world in general has gone through 5 what they call techno-economic revolutions, right? That's just a fancy word, a fancy way of saying that there are new technologies that come out and that these technologies transform society, right? And they talk about the first one being in 1771 with the Industrial Revolution down to the current one, which is the 5th revolution, which is based upon the microchip and based upon information technology and telecommunications. We are ending up this 5th revolution, and we are about to go into the next one. The next one will be tied to biotechnology and artificial intelligence and blockchain currency and technology and robotics and machine learning, all these new emerging 5G telecommunication, all these new technologies will be dropped upon our society. And we have to decide if we're going to be a leader in that new economy, in that world. And if we are a leader, then we'll be in a position to build an economy that will drive industries, that will create businesses. The businesses will create jobs. The jobs will create wealth. The wealth will transform communities, and the communities will transform the people. That's why capturing the future is so critical for us at this time. I believe the next mayor, the mayorpreneur, he or she has to be able to direct the city, to marshal the resources, to capture the future, to build this new economy that will impact jobs and impact the people and give our people hope. So those are the 3 things. Those are the what's. That's what the new mayor has to do, right? Run the city as an entrepreneur, be a transformer and not a caretaker. And then thirdly, capture the future. So that's the what. Let me tell you the how I would do it as your new mayor, as your mayorpreneur. To share that with you, though, I want to give you some context as to how I came up with this plan. 15 years ago, I decided as CEO of my company to move my company from Columbia, Maryland to Mount Vernon, Baltimore. I will tell you that my advisors thought I had lost my mind. They said, Bob, why would you move a tech company from Columbia, Maryland to downtown Baltimore? Have you lost your mind? But I was committed to Baltimore. I wanted to show my commitment. And so I moved my business from Columbia to downtown Baltimore. I must confess that the first 2 years of our time in Baltimore City were very difficult. Why? Because of the challenges that the businesses in Baltimore face. And I know that on a personal level, we have a homeless issue around our property. I've had employees who have been carjacked in broad daylight at gunpoint. We've had our cars broken into, right? One by one. The high taxes that we have to pay. I even have customers who love the work that we do, but they are afraid to come into Baltimore to visit us. Also, being in Baltimore, I have a difficult time attracting engineers and scientists because of their fear of being in Baltimore. This is the environment that businesses in the city face. And so I know that on a personal level. But despite those issues, we stayed, and we're here today, and we're going to stay. But during this time, the mayor at the time and her team, they asked me, Bob, what would it take? What would it take for us, in your opinion, Bob, to attract more businesses like this group to come to the city? And I gave it some thought, and I came up with 7 initiatives that I thought, from my experience, if the city could fix them, that they would attract more businesses like my business and attract more people and more families. So I want to share those 7 with you at a very high level. There's detail of each of those 7 initiatives on my website, Wallace for Mayor. But let me give you, though, what we're going to do. So for every initiative, we're going to do 4 things. Number 1, I'm going to assign a deputy mayor or czar individual to be the point guard for each of the 7 initiatives. The second thing that we're going to do, we're going to convene within the first 100 days of my administration. We're going to convene a conference around that particular initiative. And we're going to bring in the best minds, the leaders, the community folks, people who have the energy and the intentionality to address that particular issue. We're going to be accountable in terms of how we will be graded on how we perform. We're going to be implementing what's called OKRs, objectives and key results. So for every 7 initiatives, we're going to have what are the objectives that we are going to achieve? What are the key results that we're going to be measured by to see how well we're achieving those objectives? And then we're going to design this to have it on a dashboard that will be available to every citizen in the city, right? Because we want to be held accountable. And I can promise you this, that our approach to problem solving will be based upon focused initiative, vision of what could be, and then being pragmatic. Focused, visionary, pragmatic. That's how we're going to solve the problems of the city in each of the 7 initiatives that we're going to focus on in my administration. So what are the 7? And I won't give you much detail here. It's on the website. But what are they? You need to know this. They are the top 3, the tier 1 initiatives: public safety, educational excellence, right? And the economy and creating jobs. Those will be my primary objectives, the primary initiatives that I want to focus on in my first 100 days as mayor. Now, there are initiatives that undergird those 3 tier 1 initiatives, right? And they are things like trusted leadership. There are things like, infrastructure and quality of life. There are things like connectedness by bringing together resources in Baltimore City who share the same vision and the same intentionality, but who've never been brought together to build upon one another. And then lastly is empowering the faith-based community. Now, some will ask, well, why about the faith-based community? Well, I can tell you from my own personal experience, it was the faith-based leaders of Cherry Hill that gave my parents the hope and the vision that our future could be better than our present. I know that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. In other words, as you think, how you think will determine how you walk. My dad had a saying Daddy used to say, if you free your mind, your behind will follow. Now, Dad used a different term for behind, a 3-letter word, but I won't use that now. But he made the point. If you free your mind, your behind will follow. So faith-based becomes very important. And I think as mayorpreneur, what I would try to do is to empower the faith-based community. And we have a czar or deputy mayor responsible for making that happen. So what's my point today? My point that I think we can agree upon, that right now our city is on the wrong path. And we're going the wrong way, the wrong direction. And if we don't do something soon, we will reach a point of no return. I love this city. This city has been very good to me. Baltimore has given me the foundation of my education. It has allowed me to start businesses and to create jobs. It even has provided me my lovely bride of 42 years, Carolyn. Although we met at the University of Pennsylvania, she was studying biomedical engineering, I was studying mechanical engineering. We got married after college and started having babies. So I have 5 adult, lovely, successful children. My kids are blessed, They have their mother's good looks and her intelligence. Praise the Lord. But I'm so glad that we met and that we had an opportunity to raise a family. I've started businesses. I've written 8 books. I've traveled the world. I've met all kinds of kings and queens. And what I desire to do today is bring all of that knowledge, all that experience, all those relationships to Baltimore City and make it available to our city to become a great city. Now, I will tell you that there are those out there today that I call them the naysayers, because they always quick to tell me, well, Bob, an independent candidate has never won in Baltimore. They say, Bob, if you're not a Democrat, you have no chance of being mayor in Baltimore. These are the naysayers. But what I say to the naysayers is this: is that prior to the year 1610, the naysayers said that the sun revolved around the earth, that the earth was the center of the universe, until Galileo proved that point not to be true. The naysayers said in 1954 that man would never run the mile race below 4 minutes. Well, Mr. Bannister proved that to be wrong. The naysayers said prior to July of 1969, the naysayers said that man would never set foot on the moon. Well, in 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first man to land and to step on the moon. So naysayers always tell you what you can't do. Don't listen to the naysayers. Because what they tend to do is to focus on the problem and not the promise. But what we're going to do is focus on the promise and deal with the problem. That's what leaders do. That's what we will do. What I would do as mayor, as your mayorpreneur of Baltimore City. So what's my ask? What is my ask? My ask is very simple. My ask is that you join me in this journey, that you join me in changing Baltimore. I need your prayers. I need your votes. I need your support. And guess what? It doesn't matter to me what part of the city you come from. If you're city number 1 or city 2. It doesn't matter to me if you woke up this morning in Cherry Hill or in Federal Hill. It doesn't matter to me if you buttered your bread in Harlem Park or in Roland Park. And it doesn't matter to me if you lay your head down tonight in Charles Village or in Harlem Park or in Emerson Village. I need you on this team. I need you as part of this process. I need you to be the new change that we're going to bring to Baltimore. Because indeed, we are one Baltimore. We are better together. And yes, we will go into the future together. Thank you so much for your time. God bless you, and God bless our great city.